I think most of our viewers would know it's probably a foregone conclusion that the 38 Special is an effective man stopper and has been for 90 years. Hello everyone, and welcome back to AmmoMart.com, where you can find real firepower online. In the previous two videos, we covered the history of the 38 Special caliber and then talked about how it would fit in today's everyday carry community. I promised when we made those videos that we would do what we normally do, which is come out to here in Ghost Town and fire them off into some ballistic gel and test the neutralization power of the 38 Special. I think most of our viewers would know it's probably a foregone conclusion that the 38 Special is an effective man stopper and has been for 90 years. But one of the differences in today's video is we're going to focus a little more on the velocity of bullets, especially when we shoot them out of the everyday carry gun, the Smith Airweight. I think it's going to come as a surprise to some people, perhaps how much barrel length affects the speed and then potentially the stopping power of the bullet that you happen to select. I also, at the end of the video, have maybe an option for some people who have a hard time shooting lightweight snub-nosed revolvers in a sort of a modified poly bullet that we've shot before on the channel, but we'll revisit it real quick at the end. So our setup today is our normal setup, which is a modified FBI sort of ballistic test. Our gelatin is graduated to 15% and there's only required 10%, but the distances are the correct thing. And we also have the gelatin dressed up as we normally do, which the FBI standard required. So hopefully I'll remember to record the speeds off the chronograph, and then we can post those while you watch the video. Especially pay attention to the speeds on the poly bullet when we fire it at the end of the video. So let's get started. The guns I've assembled for today's demonstration is a Smith Airweight and a Taurus model 66. The 66 is chambered in 357 Magnum, and I chose that because I would also like to shoot some plus P ammunition for the test. The Airweight is actually rated for plus P as well. And then I have, of course, some normal or non-plus P rated ammunition, and I hope to kind of get a handle on how much differences there is in those two rounds. And significantly, you'll notice I have my tape measure, just for everybody's own general knowledge. The Airweight has a 2-inch barrel, and on purpose I selected the Taurus because it has a 4-inch barrel. These were all provided to me by our good friends at the Buffalo Trading Company, a good friend of the channel. So to begin today's demonstration, I'm going to start with a 125 grain 38 Special manufactured by Buffalo Cartridge Company in Findlay, Ohio. Try to give everybody an idea about how much a range round will penetrate ballistic gel as well as the speed. The 642 has an enclosed hammer, so I'll do my very best to try to get one into the gel block. And this can be a little bit of a challenging gun to shoot for accuracy. So we'll try to go towards the top of the gel block and stay relatively over to the left if possible. There it went. Gonna open and go down range and see what result we got. You can see straight line in, not much cavitation. This obviously wouldn't have done a ton of damage, but I still wouldn't want to get hit with one. And it did cover the required distance by the FBI of 12 to 20 inches of penetration. So these are 16-inch blocks. It's easily there. Now we'll take the same bullet and put in a longer barrel. And your expectation would be that you're going to get more speed out of the longer bullet. Or, I'm sorry, the longer barrel, but let's see what happens. This one I'm going to cycle the hammer on. Take a pretty good aim. Much less recoil, of course, in the much heavier frame gun. Now let's go compare, and so much for physics. That was actually 30 feet per second slower. So far, that's the theory not holding water. We're going to duplicate this again to see if the trend does keep. But interestingly enough, I don't know about chronograph error. You'll notice much thinner entry and it actually went at least 8 inches farther. So that's an interesting finding. We're going to try to duplicate that over, of course, starting with the Airweight and then the Taurus again, because now I'm more than curious. Okay, once again with the Airweight, I'm going to try to put it right next to the other one. And I did a decent job of running it close to the last one. And notice, straight line, no cavitation. This one did seem to tumble a bit more, but I wouldn't say it actually tumbled. It more kind of landed with an upward cant to the projectile. Last one with our range round. And this one didn't penetrate near as far. So far, I would say, at least with the Buffalo cartridge brand, not a huge difference in speed based on the barrel length and the penetration, except for the 1, 3, or 4 are pretty similar. Now, let's move on to some self-defense sort of concepts. And I'm going to start with the XTP from Hornady, 124 grain, as you can tell, hollow point ammunition. And I'm going to attempt to stay more towards the middle of the gel block if possible. You are going to get a much larger report related to the recoil on this guy, is hopefully we'll be able to catch on camera. So this is XTP right about center of the gel block. Noticeable difference in recoil. And the speed was 719. But you'll notice, middle of the block on the edge, it did tumble, a little bit more cavitation, and this projectile is actually facing backwards, which could spell ouch. So now we'll use the Hornady XTP in a longer barreled Taurus 66 and see how much speed difference we have. Of course, last time with the Airweight was 719. So here we come a bit down the middle with the Taurus. Very manageable recoil out of that larger heavy frame gun. We did notice a significant increase in speed with the Hornady and the longer barreled Taurus 66. It does get somewhat challenging after you put enough holes in these guys to figure out what hole is actually what. But I can honestly tell you that in my humble, I was aiming middle towards the right, lining up here. Cavitation is not great, and so far, none of the rounds have actually mushroomed, which is kind of interesting. You would expect them to, but we have talked before about how sometimes it would seem that denim does have a tendency to plug up the hollow point, keeping it from expanding. So we're now going to move on to plus P rated ammunition, see what kind of speed increases that we can get. Plus P can be a little challenging in untrained hands. It's very, very much an increase in pressure between the maximum of 17,000 related to a normal 38 special, and this one should be rated at no more than 20, but that extra 3,000 feet, or I'm sorry, that extra 3,000 PSI could be substantial. So we're going to try to stay to the left of the block. I'll try to keep a handle on the recoil impulse for you guys, see what we get. Oh yeah, way more pop. And you'll notice it's challenging to figure out what to do with all of your digits in a snub-nosed revolver. If you got large hands, it's hard to know what to do with them. Now that fella should have entered, oh, hard to tell once again. So I'm guessing that it's a lowest one, and we did get some more cavitation on it if that's the one, but the slow-mo camera will tell us. I do look like that was from one from before. So somewhat faster than the normal 38 special round out of the long Taurus barrel, but those two, the plus P, as you can see, kind of catches up if you have a short barrel or need some extra stopping power. Now, what we're gonna do is put one of the plus P rounds in the Taurus. I will try to stay to the right and hopefully have an easy time figuring out which one was which. So this is off to the right and low. That speed was also 846, interesting. Exact match of the one prior. Aha, we did have our first mushroom. It's just barely off the edge of the gel block. Not a ton of cavitation, but definitely a mushroomed round and more than adequate as far as the penetration power or penetration distance. As I promised, at the end of this video, I don't particularly find shooting snub-nosed revolvers to be a terribly pleasurable thing to do, especially in an Airweight frame. One of the concepts that's been around for some years now is a extremely lightweight, this is a 77 grain bullet, and you'll notice the fluting on the bullet is such that it's not designed to expand. Essentially, the science behind this is that these flutes actually work on a Venturi effect, and it actually propels soft tissue and liquid forward faster than the speed of sound. Theory being you're creating a sonic boom in a body cavity. One of the interesting things is now they've gotten 9mm, we've shot 40 poly on the channel before, is whether it actually works or not. I was rather disappointed when we shot the 40, but some of that was my lack of understanding in how all of this works, which is, once again, non-expanding bullet. But what you should have is a lot of cavitation and hopefully a lot of tumbling. And I got that right off of the ARX sort of spec sheet or website. So let's see what happens when we put one of these in an Airweight. I'll let you know the difference in recoil impulse, and I'm going to try to stay right down the middle with all of it so they're easy to determine which one we actually have. Okay. 77 grain, and on the side of the box, this is supposed to move out at north of 1,200 feet per second, which is a remarkable increase in where we are. So I'm going to go right down the middle with this guy. It did have substantially less recoil than the Plus P. I would say less even than the 124 grain Hornady. Pretty similar to the Buffalo cartridge range round. Shootable. Not all day, but certainly shootable. Speed was only 885. Thanks for pointing that out, Matt. I'm going to try to do another one just to see what happens and make sure that, see if that's an anomaly or not. You'll notice out of the small barrel, she does not develop the speed that it's advertised on the side of the box. So here we go again. That one was 1108, much closer. I would say if you're within 100 feet per second, that's an acceptable sort of standard deviation. Let's go see what happened to the rounds. It does not look like so far that they made it into block number 2. And unless my eyes deceive, they only penetrated about 8 inches. Not acceptable, but I'll measure it. Not acceptable for FBI standard testing. I, to my eye right here, can see no cavitation, and I certainly cannot see any hint that they ever tumbled. With the Airweight frame, we have not a lot of penetration, and we certainly don't have any hint that this bullet would stack up near as well as the more conventional rounds. What I'd like to do is try 1 or 2 out of the longer barreled Taurus and see if that doesn't improve its performance a bit. So here we go. 2 of the ARCS rounds out of the Taurus. Come over to the right a little bit. That speed was 1108 feet per second. And number 2. Very, very manageable recoil impulse with the Taurus. I would say a shooter's dream if that's all one wanted to do all day long. Very, very light recoil. Speed was 1108 again. So from this side of the gel block, can't see much. It would appear I could kind of make it out here. Not a significant increase in performance. I'm going to put my finger on the gel block where you can see the top of at least one of the ARCS rounds. And it is right at that 7 3/4, 8-inch range, just like the other one. And I certainly don't see any hint of a major cavitation or tumbling of the round. So as we've done in the past, what I'd like to do is a cylinder dump. Sometimes it's a mag dump, depending on the platform we're using, and try to demonstrate what the differences are between normal self-defense rounds in the .38 special caliber as compared to plus P. Now, having said all that, you guys got to give me a little bit of a break in the fact I don't shoot revolvers a lot, and when you're trying to do a cylinder sort of dump, it's not going to look very smooth. But what I'm trying to get a hold of is, if you guys watch the video carefully, how much recoil impulse there is between the two guns, and I will try to do my best to keep it in a vice grip, and you're going to see a remarkable difference in the way the gun handles, regardless of who's shooting it. There's just not a lot of counterweight in an Airweight frame as compared to the larger Taurus. Off. All things being equal, it seems to me that it's actually easier to shoot the Airweight faster because of the trigger design. I wasn't trying to be accurate. If I hit the steel, it was incidental. I'm just keeping the muzzle down and seeing how fast I can run the trigger based on reset and the different things. I'm not a revolver shooter, so had I taken the time to reset the sights on all of it, it would have skewed the test. Hopefully what we're actually watching is not accuracy, but how much the gun is able to control or not be controlled while we're trying to work it quickly. Now, I'm not bashing Taurus products, but let me say this, to say the least, I've actually run a better trigger than what's on that Taurus stock 66. Believe me, it's a bit clunky, and that might be affecting the test as well. So we've concluded our field testing on the .38 special caliber using different weights, sometimes radically different design projectiles than some people perhaps are used to. What we find is pretty much that some do well, some do better than others. Now, interestingly enough, as far as the penetration goes, except for the ARX bullets, the .38 special easily passed the FBI standard. In our previous testing, we've had lots of calibers that were hollow points that didn't open up. We've also discussed potentially some reasons of why that could be. The interesting thing, though, as we go forward is, right now, I'm not sold on the ARX technology. I'm going to do a video really soon about the ARX concept in a different caliber. But for right now, every time that I've seen this round, it underperforms. Some at home are saying that 9 inches is plenty of penetration. Well, the FBI would disagree with that. And as we've talked before, every time the bullet encounters skin, that's -3 inches of penetration. In my humble opinion, right now, at least in the .38 special from ARX, I'm not a fan. It's the least performing bullet that I've seen so far in a lot of demonstrations covering a lot of different calibers. Stay with something tried and true in my mind, like the Hornady, Federal Punch, one of those types of rounds in a convention jacketed hollow point form, and I think you absolutely have an effective man stopper.